What if the story of European ancestry, a tale we thought was set in stone, is missing its first, most surprising chapter? For generations, the narrative has seemed pretty straightforward. Prehistoric hunters, followed by farmers from the east, and then waves of Indo-Europeans from the steppes. It's a story that unfolds almost entirely within Europe and Western Asia. It feels complete, but, as it turns out, it's not. We've often looked to the East for the origins of Western civilization. But what if the key to understanding the genetic makeup of millions of Europeans lies not on the steppes of Asia, but just across a narrow strait of water in Africa? What if the established story of European ancestry is missing a critical chapter from another continent? We're about to explore the genetic evidence linking millions of Europeans to ancient North African populations, adding a fascinating and unexpected layer to the history you thought you knew. This isn't just about recent migration. This is a story written in our DNA thousands of years ago. Before we get into the genetics, let's look at the clues hidden in history. We often see the Mediterranean Sea as a border, a big blue line between Europe and Africa. But for most of human history, it wasn't a barrier at all, it was a superhighway. Long before Greece and Rome, ancient peoples sailed these waters, weaving a vast web of trade and contact. The Phoenicians, masters of the sea from the Levant, set up colonies all along the coasts of North Africa and southern Europe. Their greatest city, Carthage in modern-day Tunisia, became a powerhouse, its influence stretching from Africa to Sicily and Spain. Then came the Romans. Their entire empire was built on the idea of mare nostrum our sea. To them, the Mediterranean didn't divide their world. It was the heart of it. Roman legions, traders, and citizens moved freely between provinces in North Africa, the Near East, and Europe. This created a level of mobility the world had never seen before. Goods, ideas, and, most importantly, people flowed in all directions. This wasn't a world of sealed-off continents. It was a fluid and interconnected hub. This ancient foundation of contact set the stage for one of the most significant periods of interaction in European history, the arrival of the Moors. In the year 711, an army of North African Berbers and Arabs crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, beginning their conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. For the next 7 centuries, large parts of modern-day Spain and Portugal, a region they named Al-Andalus, were under Muslim rule. The term Moor was a broad European label for the diverse Berber and Arab peoples who came from the Maghreb, the western half of North Africa. The influence of Al-Andalus on Europe is undeniable. It was a dazzling center of learning and science, while much of Europe was in a much darker age. But beyond the brilliant architecture and philosophy, a deeper mixing was happening. For more than 700 years, populations lived side by side, intermarrying and blending together. While history tells us about these conquests and cultural exchanges, it can only hint at the full human story. These are the breadcrumbs that suggest a connection, a shared history that runs deeper than just trade. But to find real proof, to turn these historical whispers into scientific data, we have to look somewhere else, a record that can't be erased, buried deep within our own cells. Our investigation now takes us high into the mountains of eastern Morocco, to a place called the Grotte des Pigeons, or Cave of Pigeons. This is no ordinary cave. It's home to one of the oldest known cemeteries in Africa, dating back 14,000 to 15,000 years. Here, a Stone Age people known as the Ibero-Maurusians laid their dead to rest. For decades, the origin of the Iberushans was a huge puzzle. Their name, Ibero-Maurusian, reflects the old theory that they were European hunter-gatherers who had crossed from Iberia into Africa. For years, this was the accepted story. But the bones of Taforel held a secret that could only be unlocked by modern technology. In 2018, scientists did what was once thought impossible. They sequenced the genomes of individuals from the cave, analyzing the oldest human DNA ever recovered from Africa. The results were revolutionary. The study found absolutely no genetic link to the ancient hunter-gatherers of Europe from that period. The Ibero-Maurusians were not colonists from Spain. Their genetic story was far more complex and pointed in completely different directions. The analysis showed their DNA was a surprising mix. About 2/3 of their ancestry was most closely related to ancient peoples from the Near East, known as the Natufians. This suggested a deep ancient connection spanning North Africa and the Levant, far earlier than anyone had imagined. But it was the other portion of their DNA that sparked even more debate. The remaining ancestry was linked to populations from south of the Sahara. Some studies interpret this as a direct link, showing that people were moving across the Sahara 15,000 years ago. More recent analyses suggest the picture is more complex, and this component may represent a unique, ancient North African population that also contributed to later sub-Saharan groups. Either way, the skeletons of Taforelt represented a genetic crossroads. These ancient North Africans were not an offshoot of Europe. The evidence was starting to suggest the story might just be the other way around. The Grotte des Pigeons reset our understanding of ancient North Africa, revealing it as a hub of human migration, not an isolated backwater. This discovery laid the groundwork for the next crucial part of our investigation, the genetic trail leading directly into Europe. History gave us clues, and archaeology gave us a new perspective. Now, we turn to the hard data: population genetics. Specific markers in our DNA, called haplogroups, act like genetic signposts, allowing scientists to trace lineages back through thousands of years. And it's here we find the undeniable link. Let's start with the Y chromosome, passed down from father to son. One haplogroup, EM81, tells an unmistakable story. Today, EM81 is the most common paternal lineage across Northwest Africa, found in over 80% of some Berber populations. It's nicknamed the Berber marker. Outside of Africa, its haplogroup is extremely rare, with one glaring exception: the Iberian Peninsula. In Spain and Portugal, the EM81 haplogroup appears at frequencies of around 5 to 7%, on average dramatically higher than anywhere else in Europe. Its concentration is highest in the lands of Old Al-Andalus. This isn't some ancient, fated signal. The genetic variations of EM81 found in Iberia are so similar to those in the Maghreb that they point to a relatively recent arrival. Geneticists have dated this influx of North African paternal DNA to the period of Moorish rule that began in 711 CE. This is the genetic echo of the Berbers and Arabs who crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, proof written in the Y chromosomes of millions of Spanish and Portuguese men today. But the story doesn't stop there. If we look at mitochondrial DNA, passed down from mother to child, we find another layer of our deep African roots. Lineages designated with the letter L are quintessentially sub-Saharan African in origin. For years, it was assumed that any sub-Saharan DNA in Europe was the result of the Roman Empire or the transatlantic slave trade. But a groundbreaking study analyzing these L lineages in Europe found something astonishing. While these L lineages make up less than 1% of the total European gene pool, their history is incredibly deep. The study found that while about 65% of these lineages arrived in more recent times, a surprising 35% of them form ancient European-specific branches. This reveals that there was gene flow from sub-Saharan Africa into Europe, not just in recent history, but stretching back as far as 11,000 years ago. This is a profound revelation. It paints a picture of a past where movement between Africa and Europe was a slow but persistent feature of the human story, predating the pyramids and Stonehenge. The combined evidence from our paternal and maternal DNA is conclusive. The question is no longer if some Europeans have African roots, but what those roots mean for our understanding of history. With such powerful evidence, it's important to be precise about what this all means. The data is clear, but it's also full of nuance. So let's separate the science from the potential exaggeration. First, let's quantify the connection. On average, North African ancestry in modern populations in Spain and Portugal ranges from about 4% to 11%. It's highest in the west and south and decreases as you move north and east. In places like Sicily, the contribution is still notable, while in Northern and Eastern Europe, this specific ancestry becomes minimal or absent. So, we are primarily talking about a significant genetic infusion into Southern European populations. Second, it's vital to distinguish between North African and Sub-Saharan African ancestry. The bulk of the African ancestry in Southern Europeans is from North Africa, linked to groups like the Berbers. Direct Sub-Saharan African ancestry in most of Europe is, by comparison, very low, typically estimated between 1 to 3% in Iberia and nearly zero in the north. While the ancient lineages prove a prehistoric connection, the overall quantity of this ancestry remains small. So, what does this not mean? It doesn't mean that white people are secretly black, or that European populations are primarily African. Those claims are a wild oversimplification. The foundational layers of European ancestry, the original Mesolithic hunters, Neolithic farmers from Anatolia, and Bronze Age Indo-Europeans, are still the dominant components of the European gene pool. What this evidence does mean is that the story of European origins isn't a simple tale of isolation. It's a story of constant and surprising mixture. It reveals that the Mediterranean was a melting pot for millennia, and that Africa played a key role in shaping the genetic landscape of southern Europe. That 4% to 11% North African ancestry in Iberia isn't a tiny footnote. It's a substantial chapter of their history. It breaks down the simple narrative of conquest and reconquest and replaces it with a more realistic and far more interesting story of cultural and genetic fusion. The African roots in some European populations, therefore, are not a myth. They are a scientific fact, proven by the signatures left in the DNA of millions. But these roots are specific, largely North African, concentrated in the south, and layered on top of an older European genetic bedrock. Understanding this reality doesn't erase anyone's identity. It enriches it, showing that our histories are more intertwined and complex than we ever thought. We started with a simple question: what if the story of European ancestry was missing a chapter? Turns out, we've uncovered a whole hidden volume of human history. We followed the historical breadcrumbs from Phoenician sailors to Roman centurions, which pointed to a Mediterranean world of connection, not separation. We stood at the mouth of a 15,000-year-old cave in Morocco, where the bones of the Ibero-Maurusians shattered old theories and revealed a North Africa that was a vibrant crossroads. And finally, we followed the invisible trail of DNA itself, unmistakable Berber marker EM81, flowing in the veins of Spanish and Portuguese men, and the ancient maternal lineages telling a story of contact reaching back into the mists of prehistory. The evidence is clear. The history of Europe and Africa isn't a story of two separate worlds. It's a shared story of continuous interaction and mixture. The presence of African DNA in some European populations isn't an anomaly. It's a testament to this shared past. It reminds us that no population is pure and no history is simple. Our modern ideas of race and geography are recent inventions, flimsy boxes that fall apart when you look at deep history and genetic science. The story written in our DNA is one of a single, sprawling, interconnected human family. And as we continue to decode this incredible record, we'll no doubt find that we're all far more connected than we ever dared to imagine. If you want to uncover more hidden stories from our shared past, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. And let us know in the comments, what piece of hidden history should we investigate next? Thanks for watching.